Welcome to Real Estate Grad School. We coach experienced real estate agents to create and build the habits and systems that rapidly increase your income, build your team, and allow you a much greater peace of mind. I'm Rich Levin. I've been coaching experienced real estate agents for over 20 years to exceptional success. Come and learn. First skill of great negotiating is find out what your clients want and find out what the other party wants. And here's the key. Find out where they want to go, your buyers where they want to buy, your sellers where they're going, why they want to buy or sell, what's motivating the move, when they want to have the move complete, when the buyer wants to get in the house, when the seller wants to have their move complete. That tells you urgency. And what's most important, or what's important to your clients, or what's important to the other party. So when you're negotiating, what's important to your clients and what's important to the seller if you're on the buyer side, or the buyer if you're on the seller side. And I emphasized yesterday that was a very important skill, and I'll give you a tip now. But this tip I'm about to give you is not for the faint of heart. This is for somebody who's taken their negotiations seriously. I'm laughing because I loved doing this. You don't do it every time. You don't do it every time. But you do when you need to. So you have an offer on a listing. So Maria, I have an offer on your listing. Okay? Or Shandy, I have an offer on your listing. And I call you. And I say, Marie or Shandy, I have a buyer who is thinking about making an offer. They're really ready to make an offer, but they have a couple questions. Can I ask you a couple things? Now understand, I have the offer in my hand, but I'm saying to you, I have a buyer who's thinking about making an offer, but they have a couple questions. When you say that to another agent, that agent perks up. Now, if there's 15 offers, they say, I don't have to answer your questions. We got 15 offers. We're not worried. See you later. Write your offer. Bring it in. But if there's no offers on it, they're going to be very eager to answer whatever questions you have. So then I'll say to them, my buyers just wanted to know, where are your sellers going? Like, if they can, is there a time frame? If they can make it any easier, is there a particular time frame your sellers really want to accomplish? Now that's something the listing agent should not tell you. You can do the same thing on the other side. If you're a listing agent talking to the buyer's agent, they should not tell you that. It gives away the urgency of the seller. But I've never had anybody not, well, I have. There was one very strong agent in Rochester, Judy. She was the number one agent in the area before Holly was. And Judy said to me, Rich, I'm not going to tell you that. Write your offer. You've got a buyer who wants to write an offer. You're going to write the offer. Get them to write the offer. You're a good agent. And I laughed. I said, Judy, thanks. You got it. So, but I had some, a time frame. So I'd find out from them why they're moving, where they're moving, when they're moving, if there's anything else that's important to them. And then I knew the level of urgency, and it gave me a huge advantage. But I said, this is not for the faint of heart. As a matter of fact, whether you ever do that or not, it's an excellent example of how important having information is to being a strong, confident negotiator. Because once I knew that, I had way more control. Did I tell my clients? Sometimes, most of the time I did, but often I did not tell my clients I had that information. I just looked really, really, really like a great negotiator because I knew how aggressive or not aggressive they needed to be. If it was necessary, if it was helpful to tell them. But see, remember the rule of negotiating? Don't give as little information. If I didn't give it to you in this form, here it is, you should write it down. First rule of all negotiating, give as little information as possible and get as much information as possible. I'll say it again so you can write it down. First rule of negotiating, first skill of negotiating, give as little information as possible and get as much information as possible. So with my buyer, my client, well, I'm selling a house and I've got this great information from the seller. Now, I have a responsibility of disclosure to tell my client everything that they should know, need to know. There's no need for me to tell them everything that I know, but I can use it. But if I need to tell them, if there's a reason to inform them, to help them be more aggressive or less aggressive, then I'll let them know all about that. So anyway, that was yesterday. So let's get to today. The second skill of great negotiating: prepare the parties for the negotiation. Huge. Prepare the parties for the negotiation. Okay? And I wrote this down, I copied it from somewhere, I'll explain where. An educated client is your best client. The more educated your buyer or seller is, and how the negotiations are going to go, and what might come up, the more prepared they are, the more educated they are, the easier it's going to be to work with them, and the better client they're going to be to you. That comes from Sims Men's Clothes, Sims Clothing Stores, a clothing store in Buffalo. They opened a few other locations over time. And Sims had a slogan that said an educated consumer was your best customer. And I just sort of used that. I want to give credit to where credit is due. That's where it came from. An educated, a prepared client is your best client. Every difficulty you may have with a negotiation is easier when the client's prepared for it. And every difficulty you have is harder when your clients are unprepared, when things are a surprise to them. Prepare the clients. When they're prepared, they trust you. When they're not prepared, they mistrust you. That's an additional advantage of preparing the clients. I'm going to tell you how in just a sec, how to prepare them. Most people are poor negotiators. Most people fear negotiation. They hate negotiation. When you prepare them for how it's going to go and then it goes that way, not that you're going to get what you want, but you just explain the process, and the process is just what you explained. When you prepare them, they trust you. And that gives you a huge advantage and more referrals. I believe one of the reasons I got so many referrals was because I made people feel so good, so confident, so comfortable with their negotiating. And if you don't prepare them, they don't trust you. And that's serious, and that makes your life and their life more difficult. So when you prepare sellers for the listing presentation, as a listing presentation after you've signed the listing, you can tell them, you can prepare them, you can tell them, I want to explain to you exactly how the negotiations go when there's an offer, but we'll do that after we've agreed to work together. Because I pride myself in my strength in negotiating. That's something you can say too. I pride myself in my strength in negotiating. So I'll really share with you all the tips and secrets. I'll prepare you for how things go, just to make things smoother and easier once we've agreed to work together. Prepare the buyers after you write the offer. Now, it's better to prepare the buyers at a buyer presentation, but since probably none of you and very few people actually have buyer, who does? Judy Newhaven. But aside from Judy, most people don't do buyer presentations. It's a good thing to do, but people just don't nowadays. Just start showing houses. Send them to the bank, show houses. But anyway, since you're not going to do it at a buyer presentation, prepare the buyers for the negotiation. I'll explain how in a moment. After you write the offer. So you've written the offer, and before you send them off, give them confidence in you and in the process by explaining to them what's going to happen next. And in all other negotiations, when you're presenting the offer for the sellers, remind them, reinforce how the negotiation is going to go. When you're negotiating over repairs or inspections or appraisals, prepare people, explain how those negotiations go. If you're ever asked for any concession and you need to give into anything, need to negotiate anything, prepare your buyers and sellers for how the negotiations are going to go. So here's what you do. I'll slow it down here because this is the piece you really want to get. This is the one you really want to make notes of. How to prepare the sellers. Okay, explain what happens when they receive an offer. What decisions they have to make. What decisions? More than price. Price, closing date, personal property, leaseback situations, financing. There may be repairs, other addendums, other inspections. When they receive the offer, prepare them for the decisions they're likely to make. The players, what role do they have to actually negotiate with the other party? A lot of people think they have to negotiate directly with the seller or the buyer. No, I'll be negotiating on your behalf. I'll be speaking to the other agent. I don't get to speak to their clients. They don't get to speak to you unless you want to speak to them. It's usually not a good idea. So I'll speak to that. I'll speak to their agent, and then in the time frames. Usually this happens pretty quickly. We may do things verbally. I prefer to do them in writing, but a lot of agents nowadays take the lazy route. They'll do it verbally, but I'm gonna push to have it done in writing, because I hate when somebody says they'll do something and then when it comes to writing, it's different. Or not every detail is covered verbally, and then more details come up when it's written. So I'm going to push to have things written. Now that's just me. That's just my preference here. Explain the decisions, the players, the time frames. Describe the wisdom of keeping the negotiation going. Screw these people. The offer's too low. Screw those sellers. They're unreasonable. So right up front, before the negotiation begins, I describe the wisdom of keeping the negotiation going. When we get to that point, I remind them of that. Caution them to remain objective and focused on the goal of getting the house sold. Don't let it become personal. I hate them. Let's not hate them. People are often not quite themselves when they're selling or buying. I mean, in your daily life, I imagine you don't go around hating people too much. Hope not. But if you do, that's fine. So I say, so let's not hate them. Let's sell them the house, if possible. And then tell the sellers the other likely negotiations. Negotiations over repairs, possible appraisal negotiations. That's not too often now in this market right now. But negotiations over repairs, negotiations over inspections, negotiations over closing dates. Tell them anything that you know based on the conversations you've had with the other agent and what you know about the client and the situation, what other likely negotiations are going to come up. Almost certainly inspections. And the options they have in responding to them. You're just preparing them so that when those things happen, they trust you and they look to you and they trust you. You can practice all this. You can think about negotiation and just how you're going to do these things. And it's really good, it's smart, it's best to practice. With a buyer, explain what to do when they find the one. They're in the house, they like it, they want to buy. What do? They tell you, we want to buy this one. Maybe that's what they do. They start to fear you then. You're going to pressure them to make a higher offer. So explain what happens when you're in a house. I may ask you, this looks like you like this one, or you may tell me, I think this one we might want to make an offer. And then we sit down and explain to them what happens next. We sit down, we write the offer, review an offer and the decisions and the players and the time frame. So review an offer with them. You don't have to review every detail, but all the blanks they have to fill in, the decisions they have to make, the roles of the other people. Review an offer with them. Give them a copy of the offer. I usually write sample on it, as if it's so important they can't find one on their own. They can probably download one online, but I give them a copy of one so they can be familiar with it. So when the time comes, they're not intimidated by this multi-page document. And then describe a normal negotiation for you in your market. We make the offer, I give it to the other agent. Could be verbal. If you do verbal negotiations, describe that. Whatever you do, describe what's normal in your negotiating. And then describe common delays or glitches that may happen. Sometimes they don't get back to us. I'll be in touch with the agent. So explain if there's anything that any experiences you've had that you want to prepare them for. And caution them, just like with the sellers, to remain objective and focused on the goal, not make it personal. And explain the other negotiations that buyers might want to be involved in, all the way to closing. Could be appraisal, could be even the closing date. Explain all those negotiations, not all of them, but typical ones. You don't have to explain everything in all detail. When you've explained enough, so they're like, okay, they now know you know what you're doing. They can really trust you with this part of the transaction. And everybody's calmer, it's easier for you, and you get more referrals. And just like with the sellers, practice doing this. Not every time, or you could do it, practice every time, but it's a simple thing. Once you've practiced how you're going to review this and done it a dozen times, you'll get really good at it. So that's the second skill of great negotiating. Prepare the parties for the negotiation. And as I said, nobody else teaches negotiating this way. People teach gamesmanship, which is goofy and typically not effective. Say this, you say this, they say this, they say this. I'll throw some of those things at you perhaps not. But these skills, the ones I'm teaching you, these are the real skills of strong, smart negotiators. The skills nobody notices. Just click on the link below. I'd look forward to speaking with you.